if there are people out there, that
Hello,
people
people.
have an opportunity to find this link.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
Me
yeah,
too.
it's fun. It's always great to.
Me and Roy are going
hang
to
out.
Prince's Hot Chicken right after this. Hey,
Oh man, so good to see you. All right, so we'll just give it a half a minute and then we'll get started. I think it takes people a minute or two to find the link, but this will be perpetually on Facebook, whatever that means, and also on YouTube eventually, and on the Planetary Gigs Society website. Okay,
upside.
upsite.
Wow.
All right, here we go.
Looking up to you.
Welcome everyone to Planetary Gig Talk Live. We're talking today about morphogenesis and holistic tonality. I'm Jefferson Glassie, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gigs Society, whose mission is creating unity through music, or as I like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And I am really, really excited. I'm here in Studio One, the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gigs Society. I am not in Nepal, although I was and I could be again sometime. But really excited because able to talk today with a great musician, fabulous thinker, doer. Michael, how are you? Great to see you.
Jefferson, I can see you.
All right.
This is awesome. And I'm feeling the presence of other notable luminaries.
For sure. Yes, we have notable luminaries. You had suggested the topic of morphogenesis, and it'll be interesting to see what that all means in the context of music. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. And you asked about whether we could find Petr McClard to discuss this with us. And, you know, he's here and he is, whoa, man, he's got some things going on, including a whole piece on holistic tonality. So that's another thing we can find out today. Live from New Jersey, Petr, thank you very much.
Hello, my pleasure. What a wonderful honor to be here amongst friends and discussing fascinating topics and in a free-form way, and you know, creating some vibrations between us and out to the people. Let's see what we can do to bring some ideas forward here.
That's so awesome. And man, also really happy to once again be able to have with us the 5-time Grammy Award winner, percussionist for Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, Roy Futureman.
Oh my God.
Roy, thank you.
Wow. Well, you know, thank you again, Jefferson, for having me. It's so good to see Michael and Petr. And I'm like Petr said, I'm really looking forward to just sort of riding the wave of this forward discussion, man. It's like we're surfing on the
we're just surfing
on the wave of ideas, man. And when the ideas time has come, you know, we get a chance to, you know, splash into them again. And as a musician, this resonates with me quite a lot, you know, as we search for, you know, how we're going to shape these vibrations and how the vibrations shape us. So I'm really looking forward to just kind of diving in with everybody. And thanks for having me here.
Oh man, so great. And we'll see where this goes. I hope I can keep up with y'all. So Michael, would you like to just sort of introduce the topic and start the conversation rolling, get us headed on the surf there?
Yes. Oh, this is fantastic. The vibrational dimension of all things is now turning up again and again as a valid theory of matter and energy, and that this vibrational dimension has expanded dramatically because of this. In the beginning, we were describing our experience of cosmic things through tones in music, because they elicited enormous inner visions. And this was the connection that was shown, but not really known in a substantive physical way. But in today's world, vibration extends throughout all dimensions, throughout all scales, and also throughout the universe. And apparently, in keeping with our discussion of holistic tonality, there are fundamental tones that are simultaneous throughout the universe, Jefferson. And a simultaneous tone throughout the universe is very significant, because human beings are built upon that tone. And when we identify it, we are able to come into a resonance, and resonance is one of the terms that might really be at the center of this discussion, because resonance is our recognition of these things that we can see and feel, and resonance also is in our perception of color and in other things that are all related to the energies that human beings participate in, are part of the universe. And it's a very, let's say, narrow band of experience compared to what the universe is, Jefferson. The universe is much wider than human perception, and we are really at the mercy of our perception, which is at best a simulation.
Oh.
This recent comment by,
Okay.
this recent comment
At best, a simulation, he says.
by
Okay.
Elon Musk, that there is a very, very, very slim chance that this is the reality of realities, and that we are really part of something that would, in our world, is called simulation. And these kinds of things are at the root of our experience. And then the experiences of music lead us to a way to perceive this limitless expanse of unknowableness that human beings cannot really reach physically, except through music, except through resonance and vibration. And this is why music has a special place in this. It is our recognition. Scientific investigation uses instruments that are not musical, but the idea is that everything has a time dimension, which is really how quickly it moves, which is frequency. And then it has a scalar dimension, which is known as wavelength. But if you can imagine, the human arm has a frequency and a wavelength. A human being has a tone. Planets have tones. All these things add up into things that we can recognize as the evidence of the vibrational nature of things. Holistic is an all-encompassing wholeness. And we have also something that now I'm going to give to Petr McClard, which is the presentation of the term and the meaning of morphogenesis, which I feel is really also this very important aspect of how human beings interact in the world of music, but also in the world of vibration, and that includes thought and emotion and vision. So now I give you Petr McClard.
Wow. Now that was an intro.
That's great.
That's a
Wow.
handoff too. That's a real handoff.
Thank you, Michael. And I really appreciate you setting it up like that. And I love the fact that you introduced the word resonance, which is it's a beautiful word. And it reminds me actually of a philosopher, a British philosopher, Rupert Sheldrake, who wrote about morphic resonance. And he sort of posited it as a force that connected us, this resonance, and even in psychic ways. And you alluded to the illusory nature of our world. And I think that, you know, the Hindus would call that Maya, and the fact, right? And Maya, and that this simulation, that's not a new idea. I mean, the philosophers nowadays are coming up with some of these cosmological concepts whereby we might be in sort of a simulation, but that's been around a long time, this illusory nature. And we do know that our narrow perceptions are built on our eyeballs and ears and things like that. And then our imaginations kind of transcend a lot of that, which is fascinating, and which in the theory of holistic tonality, imagination is very important. And there are imaginary instruments and imaginary vibrations that take place too, which are fascinating. You know, the think that you have a synthesizer built into your brain, you know, where you can kind of just imagine all sorts of sounds and things and music and play. You got playback, you got imagine new music you can create, new sounds. That's pretty wild stuff. And we'll get into that. And I mean, I thought, you know, when I heard Victor explaining how his audiobook would create that space in your mind by panning the voices in such and such a way and adding reverb, I thought that was very, very wonderful insight by him on how to address that inner imagination and vibrate with it in almost subconscious ways. But yeah, I'm going to want to explore with you guys this concept of looking at music from sort of different, I would say, time domains. And one of them is our human time domain that you mentioned, you know, and our arms and our lifespans and all that. Another is maybe from a smaller creature that has a faster time domain, and maybe a larger creature. I've sort of allude to that in my theory as sort of the speed of consciousness. And at any rate, what led me to all of that was there was a time where fractals and holograms were sort of new. Holograms had been around, and then fractal geometry came out, and that really just fascinated me in itself, because they were so beautiful, the fractals, and the way that they were self-similar, and you could zoom into them and see more and more of the same stuff, but different evolving things. I mean, really, it's just crazy. And now you can go out and, you know, Google fractal zooms, and you can spend an hour zooming into a fractal. It's intense. But you know, obviously, you know, the world has lots of fractals and lots of holographic aspects to it. Where, you know, even our cells have little copies of our DNA, right? Each cell in your body has a copy of your body blueprint basically in there. And that's a beautiful sort of holographic thing that happens right inside of us. And I'm sure tons more happen. And they say that memory is sort of holographic. And so all of that resonated with me in my early 20s when I first conceived of holistic tonality. And what really kicked it off for me, besides just hanging out with really great people in Santa Fe and philosophers and learning about, you know, the Greek philosophers and Euclid and all this stuff, stimulated my mind. And then my mom bought me a little Casio calculator, and I hit pi, and then it had the feature where it would play the numbers. So it would play the intervals, 3.1415927. And, you know, it would play and so I was like, wow, they just turned intervals into music. I mean, numbers on a calculator into intervals of music. It was very simple. But then I got really fascinated about electronic music at that point, and bought a little tiny Casio VL tone, and you could program in a little sequence, a short sequence, and then I would speed these sequences up. And then what I did was, I thought it was really fascinating that if you sped up, say, a C major scale to where the entire scale takes place in the course of an eighth note or a 16th note, it's not really a scale so much as it is a sound at that point. Yeah, it's right. It's just like sound, maybe a video game sound, but it's a sound. But it was really made out of a C major scale. So that really got my mind thinking about, well, what if I make a scale out of scales, and I transpose scales, And what if I make major scales out of minor scales? And does that sound different than minor scales made out of major scales? And so I started playing with this chemistry, this sonic chemistry that was in there. And, you know, by speeding it up, it became slow also, which is another fascinating thing. And
Yeah.
right. I mean, at some point so I stopped. At one point I just said, you know, I'm not going to think about fast and slow anymore. I'm going to think about sound. And so the whole thing came back around, and I just sort of saw all music and all sound as one thing, which was just the sound, the envelope, the frequencies and the envelope of the sound. Like rhythm is an envelope. It's quiet, it's emphasis, it's loudness at the right time. And you know, how that's done is up to the individual, and how much, you know, soul or spirit they have or whatever, but the envelopes and the sound. So basically I also had to, by doing that, I thought to myself, well, you know, like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony could be a note in a larger piece of music. And so, and that was really, because it's a timbre. If you look at it on an audiograph of a, no matter what music, you can throw it into a digital editor and see the audiogram of that thing. And so all music is sort of like a fractal in that way, whether it's a note, a sound, a symphony, or whatever, on one time scale or another, they are all sort of very similar. And then you know, then we could talk about how where imagination and spirit and the human force of musical force comes in. And that's, I'd love to pass it over to Roy, who spends his time playing music all day.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's really so many touch points on there. And I'm gonna go back, but I want to jump off when you talked about imagination and spirit, because with imagination and spirit, it seems like maybe we get closer to the nothingness that's holding the whole thing together. And what I mean is, like when we talked about like being in a hologram, there's a scientist, I can't think of his name, that talks about how the nature of what we're in is a simulation, much like if you're in a what's the game he kept mentioning, this game Grand Theft Auto. And that game has been created to conform to the laws of the world that the creator of the games know. So when you're in the game, you know, everything works according to those laws. And you said our reality could be like that. To figure out that game, you don't figure it out in the game, because there's another reality outside of the game. And so
Yeah.
when you talked about, um, you made me think of a reality being a simulation, and it made me think of a dream. You know, you talk about the body reinforcing itself all
Yeah.
the time, and it seems like when I think about resonance, that even in the reality that we know, we can go to sleep at night and dream another reality that's real
Mm-hmm.
while we're there. It's like an overtone of the note that we're used to. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're used to this note, but there's an overtone when we go to sleep, and our
Mm-hmm.
minds create this whole other thing. And when we wake up, it really wasn't there, but yet something happened.
Right.
See what I mean?
Oh
And
yeah, totally.
yeah, it seems like that's foreshadow to what this world is to,
Right.
you know, when we wake up or when we exit. Our exits and our entrances, as Shakespeare talks about. You know what I mean?
Yes.
All
Yes.
the actors, we just on a little stage. We have our entrances, you know, you see the babies getting born, and we have our exits. You see people when their time has gone, you know, closer to 100 years. So
And honestly, Roy, I don't know, like, if you look at the Australian Aboriginal folks, they had a civilization, 40,000, they've had it 40,000 years of contiguous civilization.
yes,
The oldest contiguous civilization.
yes.
They have, they flipped it around where the dream life is real and the waking life is the dream.
Avatar.
You know, and that's pretty fascinating
And
to
like the
me,
movie Avatar.
like
But
the
you know,
movie Avatar.
yeah, but now jumping off into the spirit of it, right?
Yeah.
The spirit gets beyond mechanics now.
Right.
It's
True.
like it's like, okay, so you mentioned holograph, the body, you see the body reinforcing itself. The plan for the whole body is in one cell over and over and over, the DNA, right? So it's implying there's, you know, you can break up the parts piece, but the hologram, everything is there in that one piece. So remember this, there is a book called Holographic Blood. That's the name of the book. The doctor's name is Peter Beagleson or something like that. The Holographic Blood. You can YouTube it, hear him talking about it.
Yeah.
And it shows he learned this technique from a Russian doctor who was interviewing a patient, and she asked the patient to tell her about your broken bone. And he's like, well, how do you know I broke my bone? I never told you that. She said she could see it in the blood. The blood is making holographic pictures of major events in our life. If someone's pregnant, it'll in the blood as a hologram. Any drop of blood.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no, I believe that because I just recently found out that they have a few survivors from the 1918 pandemic. They checked their blood. Their blood has a record of that pandemic in it still. You know, the immune system is your memory of everything that's happened to you, and your your cells carry that stuff around. And they were really kind of blown away that it has that long of a memory. But yeah, it doesn't surprise us in a certain way, the way we can remember things already in our minds. Why not our blood remember things too, you know?
Yeah, and the thing was, it was literally creating pictures. Like they show the pictures in the book. You can see it on YouTube and some of the
Okay, cool.
There's a
Holographic
lady
blood.
who's pregnant, and then you can see the baby sitting in the womb, right in the blood, in the picture of the blood.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there was one incident where a person, they could see blood leaking from the back of the neck going into the brain, and the lady, they said you need to go back and have this checked. And when she went back, and they did a MRI or whatever the scanning is, they sure enough found blood leaking to the brain. You know, but they saw the picture of it in the blood. So I'm just saying this just kind of takes it to another level. Is what I'm saying. You said imagination and spirit, so I was just jumping off to there.
Yeah.
Early talking about resonance, how we're resonating to these frequencies, and you talking about, you know, we got our ears and our eyeballs, our skin and stuff taking in this information. But what's interesting when we talk about how these frequencies, the whole idea of an image is already a profound thing. And so I just want to throw this out there with this morphogenic resonance in the spiritual. Is my grandmother used to do something where she would set a oil lamp and put a flame, a kerosene flame, behind a jar of water, right? And she always said the jar of water had to sit out all day until it did its little bubbles thing. Put the flame behind the water, turn away from it, and look at it in a mirror. So now she's looking in a mirror, looking through the water to the flame. And she says after a while, the flame will part. And in between there, pictures will start. Pictures will start. Now, I heard this story, and I was like, okay,
that's Mancy.
Yeah, it's called scrying.
Pyromancy or something.
Yeah. But the thing was, I heard her tell the story. My grandmother's real spiritual. So I was like, okay, well, she has visions and stuff. But then she said, well, once she got the picture started, you could watch it with her. And that took her to a whole nother level.
That's a different level there.
Okay, right? And then it took me about 7 years to just get a name. I said, I just need a name for what she's doing. Now, if it wasn't my grandmother, I might have said, that sounds a little far-fetched. I don't even know if I really believe it, but my grandmother's not making this up, right?
Wow, yeah.
7 years, I finally found the word scrying. And scrying is about looking in reflected light, like crystal ball gazing.
Fascinating.
You know what I'm saying? You look into a crystal ball, and the wizard says, look into my crystal ball.
There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. That's not just a joke that someone made up. The people have been doing this for centuries, and
exactly.
You know, fire was that was the original TV right there anyway.
Yeah. But that was the thing. They both get the pictures going, and they're both looking at the pictures. You know, and she said she could do it off well. So what I was saying is that we look at the nature of the eye. We can see the eye is shaped like a crystal ball.
Yeah.
And in school, when they tell you how the eye works, they tell you the light goes in, flips upside down, and comes back out, and we see things like how we think they are. You know, like an interpretation.
Right.
And so I just wanted to jump off into that realm of imagination and spirit, because as we're resonating with this reality, we've got people who relate to these tones and everything that we're talking about, and they taste the frequencies. You hit a tone, you hit two tones, they could tell you the taste sensation.
Yeah.
And to me, that's always been so fascinating. So I just want to, for people who are joining this conversation, I just wanted to, you mentioned Victor's book. And for people who don't know what you were talking about, Vic wrote a book called The Music Lesson. And Michael Cott is the pattern of the guy named Michael. Okay? So if you want to know the vibe of Michael, you want a vibe of Michael, well, he's here, right here.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so to have this conversation, I'm just glad to take part in this. But you know,
Well, and the musical aspect of this, to always keep a musical aspect to this is you know, even if you're talking about taste, here's a strange one for you. Take water, H2O. Now, what do we know about octaves? Octaves are perfect consonants, but they're not particularly fascinating in terms of their sound, right? It's just an octave. You play two notes, they're the same note. They're not as exciting as a fifth or other.
yeah, they're
But
notable. Yeah.
they're very satisfying. And think about water. Water's not exciting in terms of its flavor. But it's very satisfying. It's very refreshing, and it's perfect. And so hydrogen, and I wanted to look further into that. Sure enough, hydrogen is 1, oxygen is 8. That's already an octave right there.
Oh.
And the atomic weight of oxygen is 16. Hydrogen is 1, so that's an octave too. And they mix in H2O, 2-to-1 ratio.
2-to-1.
And I'm thinking, wait a second, water tastes like an octave sounds. And how about that's just real, right? Come on.
Oh.
That's good. Yeah, because somebody told me that whoever discovered that periodic table was done musically. The periodic table. Yeah, it was related to music somehow. Yeah,
I think so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so those are all weird vibrational patterns. And you'll see it in the spectroscopes when they do the the spectrometry of elements. You see those spectra, and they have beautiful color relationships in there too. And what are color relationships? It's more vibrational stuff, and more.
Yes. And Dr. Ibrahim Karim talks about that, how nature works diatonically a lot of times before it moves on to the next dimension. So we look at the rainbow, we see 7 different modes, really.
Yeah.
The light being the frequency, but there's 7 different interpretations of that light, different colors.
Yes. And it all happens, we happen to see 1 octave of that, approximately 1 octave.
Right. Before it goes out of visible sight.
Goes out of visible. Imagine if we had a visible like our hearing, where you have like 10 octaves or whatever, Imagine what that would be like.
Yeah, I think this is where synesthesia is starting to, come in, because it's like somebody said, like the frequency starts as just basically rhythm. It's just timing.
Yes.
You think about rhythm, it's nothing really there.
Yeah.
It's just timing.
I mean, it's an oscillator going dun, 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 but very fast. But
yeah,
that's all relative. That's what I was saying earlier, is all the time domains are relative. So if you go down to that nano scale, it doesn't think it's fast. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
It's fast to us.
Yeah.
But it could be super slow. Could be take eternity for 1 vibration at the lowest level. You know what I'm saying? It's It's very relativistic.
Yeah, it's very relative.
I had one thing I wanted to, Peter, you mentioned morphic resonance and Rupert Sheldrake and Roy Patty, Patty Rain, who's been in on our Ho'oponopono conversations, has talked about him. And I've been going down that Rupert Sheldrake rabbit hole on YouTube recently. It's kind of an amazing, that it's sort of the collective mind, the memories are there. But one of the things that Michael had said to me when we were kind of figuring out this topic is that he was saying improvised music is kind of a pure manifestation of morphogenesis, or maybe morphic resonance, which is both cosmic and holographic. And I don't completely understand that, but I'd love to hear maybe Michael or Peter talk about that.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
This is a fantastic discussion. And both Petr McClard and Roy Wooten have extensive direct experience with the dimensionality and the nature of these combined vibrational phenomena. But let me introduce this to you, and this is probably a note of hope for anyone who's listening. And it does have to do with the idea of morphogenesis, which describes something that simply occurs mainly due to the relation of things. When things are not necessarily in the same place, but they're in relation, and that relation alone is the design. But in terms of vibration, the whole design is made from one gigantic cosmic wave that is referred to by different things in different traditions in ancient times, but in the present has been referred to as something called the cryptochrome.
Ooh.
Cryptochrome means that it's cryptic and it holds not just the information that pertains to one particular thing, it holds all the information that's possible in the entire universe in one giant vibration that has been detected and has a wavelength of 30,000 light years. This wave is the fundamental tone that has so far been shown to be the lowest note in the universe.
Pretty low.
But as you know,
That's a pretty low.
if you take a fundamental tone and then you take the octave and then you take the octave and you take 1 million octaves, you're still not in the sonic realm after you've taken 1 million octaves.
That's
You
a lot
look
of
at something like that, and the fundamental tone of the universe turns out to have a response in a human being, which is the color blue. The Pioneers, which is the organization that is looking into theories of the natural earth, the pristine earth, and the meaning of the planet in its pristine state, they have adopted the color blue as a symbolic reference to this tone and also the tone of water.
Well,
and
we live on a
see
blue
evidence.
planet, so we probably
Yes.
are part of that deal there. You know, it's a beautiful sky and the oceans. That blue is really a welcome, peaceful thing to see. Probably because it's harmonizing with that fundamental tone. Who knows? You know.
As we are always, as musicians, especially on tour, we're always hanging around, waiting for something, and we inevitably end up in these discussions of cosmic things and the nature of reality. And finally, I was with a very accomplished percussionist, and I decided to ask him, what do you think the sound of two hydrogen atoms colliding is? And he looked at me and he went, that's easy. That's easy. And I went, wow, at first it sounds like he's just being flippant and just giving me a quick answer and a quick sound. But then I went, geez, he's over 70%, 70% of him is made out of hydrogen. And these things turn up because the fundamental tones, the fundamental cosmic tones are written in a cosmic holistic tonality that outlines not only all of the perfected tones of music, but also outlines all of the dimensions of energy and matter,
Deep.
and the interactions and transformations of energy and matter. Also names the infiniteness of the absence of vibration, which is known as the ether. Now, apparently, there is a way to use vibration to clear away fields and matter in a path ahead of you, to the point that you can travel nearly instantaneously. Only human beings can't do it because of the acceleration. It's instantaneous. But
Interesting.
the idea
yeah.
is that just as you can
Just
have
in time
noise
for
canceling headphones, there are things in the universe that cancel the vibration, and one of them is known as a black hole. And two black holes colliding is the origin of a galaxy, because of the vibrational capacity of two colliding black holes. The energy that occurs, that is released, is a supernova. And a supernova that has 1/10 of 1% more energy over the threshold creates a galaxy. If it does not reach that threshold, it expands and then collapses upon itself. This is the nature
this
of
reminds
black
me,
holes.
this also
and
ties
galaxies.
back, Michael, this ties back to the table of elements, and that always comes back around, because the elements are fascinating, because something like gold, which fascinates humans, and it is beautiful, but the latest science says gold is created when two neutron stars collide. That's the only thing that can hit hard enough, an anvil hard enough to push those atoms one step further than they were, to make gold. And so they do have this cosmic value to them in a certain weird way. Even though you can't eat gold, it's not going to sustain you. We turn it into money, even though it's shiny and pretty. But the power of two neutron stars colliding and creating gold is a fascinating thing. But what really fascinates me is how matter that we see and we touch, and how atoms persist for eons. Like a gold atom can sit there for eons, even though its electrons are just swirling around in there, but that same atom is there. That just fascinates me, is the persistence of things that are at once they're persistent, but at the other time they're almost infinitesimally present, because they're mostly empty space, right? Matter is mostly empty space.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like with the resonant thing, I just keep getting to this idea of when Michael said cryptochrome. There's something cryptic about it, like a Rosetta Stone. And it seems like if there's a designed scalpel, the scalpel's invisible because it's just frequencies. But out of those frequencies, there's something cryptic being written. Like for every tone, like if Michael hits a tone on the violin, if there's flower pollen vibrating, yes, it will show you a pattern in relationship
Yes.
to that, right? So we
Yeah.
see that's architecture now. There's a design principle
Yeah.
associated with these frequencies. And like you said, with the million octaves down low, that's still frequencies, even though our ear doesn't pick it up. To me, there's a design principle that's designing that wide too, where we can
Yes.
barely pick it up. And we're just trying to create our tools and stuff, our microscopes, in order to scope it, to scope it out. And so it just seems like we just keep getting to this idea of a design principle. And so when we look at the table of elements, there's not just a table of stuff. There's
Right.
a table of profound relationships.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And very persistent relationships too, that don't just fly away overnight.
Yeah.
A piece of lead doesn't just fizzle away. It stays for eons.
Yeah, and the thing is, in that table of relationships and spin, they don't start fizzling until it gets to the radioactive end,
Right.
where it's starting to fizzle back out.
Yeah.
And you put them two fizzles together, and that's where you get all of these super bombs.
You get the
Walter Russell talked about that. And so, yeah, and looking at this design principle that we're playing in, it just seems like, yeah, that everything that you're talking about is just resonating with something that's invisible, invisible strokes of relationships and cryptic, you know, it's cryptic. It's like the Rosetta Stone,
Well,
man.
and ourselves are cryptic because,
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about this concept of improv and the morphogenesis of improv and morpho shape genesis creation, shape creation. So you're
Shape
creating a
creation.
shape.
That
And
was
when
good, man. Say that again. That was so good. Morpho.
morphogenesis is shape creation. That's the Greek translation of the Greek roots.
Man, I gotta interrupt you just for a second, just
Go
so I
ahead.
don't forget what you're getting ready to say. Because
Okay.
there's a statement when Einstein heard Louis Armstrong play. He said, "This man is playing the very theories that I'm working on."
Absolutely. And and that's why I was going to actually tie it into something Miles. This is just a funny coincidence. My cousin played guitar for Miles Davis for 2 years. My cousin Garth Weber,
Whoa.
and he was during the tutu time, towards the end,
Ah.
and he toured, Europe and everything. But he told me some very interesting anecdotes. But one of my favorites that stuck with me was he talked about He didn't use the word morphogenesis, but I connected the two when I thought about this, and that is, he said that Miles would come out and he would, maybe the band, the band would be going, and then he would put out that first trumpet note, and Garth said it would just come out, and it would sound terrible. Honestly, it would sound like, oh, what is he doing? And then it would hang there, and then he would craft it. He would morphogenesis that sucker into a golden light that would envelop your spirit, and he would shape it. And and musicians are great at that. You can't hit a bad note if you're a good musician, because you're going to just make it work, and it's going to sound fantastic, and you're going to be glad it sounded bad before, because now you have a relativity of how good this sounds. You gave people something to compare it to.
Beginning, middle, and end. Storytelling.
Yeah, you're telling a story. That's right. So you might have that duck that came out there and quacked a little bit, and then all of a sudden it turned into this beautiful eagle or whatever it is.
Wow.
And I just think that, but what fascinates me more than all of that for me is, and I struggle with this, and I'd love to get your ideas on this. Where does that first moment where you, the person, decides, I'm going to do this to that note or to this phrase or that drum, I'm going to do this? Where does that come from? How does that inspiration get in there? That's what I'm really fascinated by.
So now, man, to even touch that, I have to jump on this thing of inspiration that Ho'oponopono talks about, when we start creating not out of intellect but out of inspiration. And then if I jump to which is another conversation I had with Stephen J., who was the bass player for Weird Al. He went to
Wow.
Mali and studied with the Dogon priests, and they describe music as the force. Like in Star Wars, where they said everything was the force, they said it was music, and that music was conscious. Music was a conscious entity, like basically in everything religion, when they're talking about the creator and God and stuff, it says it's music.
Uh-huh.
And that music knows you the way you know your instrument. So Michael's holding that instrument because they say inanimate matter has a fundamental consciousness too, not like yours.
That's very holistic too.
Right? So he said Michael holds that instrument and can name that violin. And Michael knows the violin, and the violin is aware of itself, not the same way. But the way Michael knows that violin is the way music knows you.
Yeah.
Okay? And you don't know music back the same way.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying?
That's really a fascinating.
We're dealing with it.
So music is playing you.
Yeah.
Music is playing you, exactly. That's what it implies to me, because now I take it in a religious context. God calls the prophets, to preach the word, right? So music's prophets are musicians. You look at musicians, man, a lot of you think about, why do you play music? Why do you get into it that much? Nobody can pay you enough money for the time you put into like just
Right.
getting into it.
No.
Like it's like you've been called to do something.
Right. No, that's
You know?
big.
And it's almost like you could say it on Star Wars religious mythology terms, that you've been called by a force that you barely know. You know?
But it helps. But it helps to think about that, because as a person, like, so one of the things I also felt was important in my journey in holistic tonality was that you become aware that you are a part of that. You are a part of that whole. And so when you leave a body of work, when you die and you've left your body of work, that's also a whole. So be aware that you're creating a larger piece of music, and a larger piece of music is also creating you. So,
yes.
you know, which is what you were alluding to there, was this circular relationship, internal, external, and cosmic.
And this brings to mind to me this Indian concept that my friend Raj was telling me about, and I think it has analogs with others, but it's NAD, N-A-D, and there's, I may get these wrong, but there's Anahat Nod, which is the struck sound, which was everything with, you know, instrument, anything like that. But there's also the Ahata Nod, which is the unstruck sound, which is the ultimate sound, the ultimate reality, that vibration thing that Michael's talking about, that's underneath everything.
Yes. Okay, Michael got something.
Let's get back to morphogenesis.
Right.
How about this? I'm in a concert series that is based on the periodic table of elements. And so far, we've done concerts named after 22 elements. And we did hydrogen, we did oxygen. Gold turned out to be a really good concert. But the elements, when you look into the history of what's been written about their properties reflect all of their individual properties. Each of them reflects an emotional place, a certain kind of place, such as melting point, reactivity, and also weight. The guest that we had for hydrogen, her music had a spacious kind of airiness to it. The guest we had for gold, she was deep and rich and I mean, filled with story and flavor and nuance and meaning. Gold. The idea of each element having a different kind of tenor.
How was your carbon concert?
Carbon has been held back because it's just so, oh man.
Save that one.
But we did some of the, we did like, you know, americium, we did selenium, you know, we did, you know, other sort of lesser, the halogens, the noble gases, you know, neon was dynamite. It turned out to be about relationships. Neon.
Glowing. Wonderful.
Glowing or not burning at all.
Yeah.
So now we have this sort of a picture of the emotions, the timbres, and the relation of different material vibrational things that are known as pure elements, and that these elements represent a vibrational place, and that all energies, all colors, and that all of our perception is based on these things. But we use hearing, fortunately, because it's so much more sensitive than sight. it holds so much more information that when you listen to a good didgeridoo player, you hear animals and other instruments and melodies inside this thing that from a little bit further down the road sounds just like one note, and you get real close to it, and it
Yes.
holds a whole world full of creatures and things, and it's telling you stories. The idea of the holographic and fractal nature of sound is also the holographic and fractal nature of time.
Yes.
Fractal time means that rhythm and variation and vibration are all governed by the same things that show us a Mandelbrot set and what that dimension is visually, and
Yes.
that these things are infinite, and the infiniteness of sound is demonstrated many, many, many times in everyday life and in music and in our perception. But this other thing happened, which had to do with the nature of what is going on when certain sounds are resonant with a universal, let's call it a universal vibrational place that corresponds to all the resonant tones and upper partials of the entire universe, and that this is written out of the fundamental vibration of the universe, which is like a heartbeat, but it's so all encompassing that it creates every other vibration simultaneously throughout the universe, and that this vibration is shown in various ways to be able to excite our perception such that we hear things like ghost tones.
Yeah. It's
There
not
is
even
a tone.
there.
Yeah, ghost tones are something we're hearing, but the two notes that are producing that ghost tone are in a perfected relation. And the
Tracy.
perfected
Yeah.
relation of tones was explored in singing first. And in singing, when a chord is carefully tuned with a number of voices, they called it the voice of the Virgin,
Yeah,
because
you'll hear
they
the
said it
extra
was Mary. They said it was Mary, and that she would come to them if they perfected the relation of their tones in their singing a perfected harmony in one place.
Well, and
And they would,
I love the fact that tones and timbre really fascinate me. And that's kind of what holistic tonality is try to reduce everything to a timbre, to a sound, to an envelope and a sound. But beside that, there's so much magic that happens on a subconscious level. And you know what I'm saying is like all the overtones. Yes, like I play guitar, and when you play harmonics, you're bringing out, you're enhancing some of those harmonic aspects of the overtones of the strings. But the strings and any instrument honestly has so many beautiful overtones in it. But a lot of those don't really strike the consciousness directly. They kind of hit the subconscious, and I think a lot about music is subconscious. And and I and it comes from both in terms of how we listen to it, and then how we make it also comes from our subconscious somewhat. And maybe it's that connection back around to what you were talking about, Roy.
Yeah, yeah, because I think that when we look at the overtone series, they sort of define steps of our relationship to music, going from octaves where, and then the fifths come in, the Gregorian chants, and then the more stuff comes in, and then that blue note comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like
Yes.
it's off, right? But
Woo.
people sing the blues all around the world.
Yeah.
See, right? And so as
Yeah.
we go further in this, like everything that you've been talking about with the hydrogen and the elements, I've gotten a chance to work with Dr. Kirby, and he worked with a bunch of mathematicians to create this software called Serious Composer. And they can create, if you can give them a number, they can show you what the frequency is.
Yeah.
So the different frequencies of the elements, the different frequencies, we're able to hear those relationships and pitches brought down into the audible
Wonderful.
spectrum.
Wonderful.
What happens is, to me, all this stuff that we're talking about, the best way to grasp it for me is as an artist, because I've got a clue from a Dr. Ricketts. He was an orthodontist that came up with the they started discovering all the Fibonacci relationships in the face. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
1 to 1.618.
Right.
Which to understand that is just to understand the shape of a cross, a holy cross. If you hold the cross up, the cross is not in the middle 1 to 1. The
Right.
cross sits not at the top like a T. It sits right in this little sweet spot, and you can feel where it is.
Yep.
That's the golden section, right? He saw that relationship all in the face. There's the short section, there's the
Yeah.
long section in the third eye. Short
Yeah.
section, long section. Short section, long section.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Over and over. Yeah.
Over and over again. So he's able to generate these in relationship to pitches. And this orthodontist told me, he'd give me a presentation right in his living room. The end of the thing, he said, and all at the final phase of all the creation, the creator's thing, the final phase is always art. The final phase is always art. So we hit a tone, right? But it makes an artistic pattern.
Yeah.
That gives us a little bit more of the cryptogram, as Michael called it, right? Right? There's an artistic realm to it. So we're trying to find the art. So to me, a lot of times with morphogenic resonance, and scientists are too busy looking at the letters and don't see the words. The letters are not there to be studied and counted. How many times does a vowel show up in the line of pi, in the sentence of pi that's unfurling? Scientists are like, they're nerdy with bow ties looking at, okay, how many times does A show up? That doesn't matter. You got to know what the language is. If we're looking at Shakespeare and we don't know the language and we just see A shows up, how many times does A show up in all the Shakespearean plays? It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Unless you're trying to do the code,
Right.
you know,
Right.
another level of code,
Right.
because
Right.
there are codes in the plays.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that there's an artistic thing. So when I listen to these different tunings and stuff, like that blue note that comes up in the overtones here, boom, it's already hitting a little in between
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of blue notes, man, when we start getting into these different
Absolutely.
tunings and stuff.
And
It's
just
like,
even the thirds themselves are like that
yes,
weird magical zone
yes,
between, you know, the blues and the whatever, the major and minor working together are so fascinating in terms of that emotional switch that plays with.
yeah.
And then that blue note on top of that is just, that relationship is just endlessly fascinating to people, obviously.
Yeah. So with this morphogenic resonance and bringing everything back to art, a lot of times, like even with rhythm, I'm able to bring it back to what is the artistic statement. Like if I say, what is the artistic statement of 5? I'm gonna go out just for a second. But if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, that's like how science is counting pi, trying to find pattern.
Right.
But if I take every other note of pi, just like we do in a scale, and I take every other note, the do re mi fa sol la ti do now sounds like 1, 3, 5. It sounds like a whole different framework. We can do that with rhythm too, to find the chord of the rhythm. So if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I skip 2 and I skip 4, right? So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now there's a signature. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I speed it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's a ding, ding, da, ding signature that comes out of that. And there's a whole music wrapped around ding, ding, da, ding that we call jazz.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, and you know, if you guys get a chance, I have like my biggest effort in software was something called Different Drummer. Well, it's something called Different Drummer, and it's out there. Different Drummer is you guys are gonna love it because it's all about what we're talking about. But one of its many functions is you can put in any number and get the binary pattern for that number.
Oh.
And you can find the rhythm of any number in terms of its binary rhythm. So every number already has an automatic binary. What you just mentioned, ones and zeros, creates a very simple, it doesn't necessarily talk about the emphasis. You can put that on top of it, but it creates a pattern.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's also something I'm very interested in. That what's cool about that, and there was a guy, maybe this was Alan Turing or something. It might have been him that did it. Maybe it was a mathematician, Gödel. But basically, any machine could be built based on one number. So, you know, any computer program as it dumps onto your hard drive, it's a bunch of ones and zeros, right? So you
Yes.
got this binary stuff on your hard drive. Well, guess what? That can be all put out into one number. So every program you've ever seen is really just one number. We don't think of it that way, but it is. And the same thing with rhythms and melodies and things like that. That's just a beautiful mathematical relationship that can't be escaped, nor should it be. It's just
Yeah.
what it is. You know,
Yeah.
you just marvel at it basically, and then you appreciate it, you know. And
Right. But go ahead, Michael. What were you gonna say? Okay, but it's just
Hey,
I was
here
going
we
to,
are at this place where it's a discussion of unification of vibration through
yes.
recognizing how it occurs from different points of view.
Right.
And this thing of time dimension, in other words, scales of time, the time world of a smaller thing, the time world of DNA vibration, light now shown to come out of any living process, that DNA itself it radiates a light frequency that can literally be seen with an instrument. But in terms of our perception in sound, this came up because of something. First of all, Big John, right here, recorded a cicada, a single cicada that was buzzing outside the studio office door. He then, over a period of time, took the chirp of the cicada, a single chirp, and he slowed it down 100 times.
Oh.
And the result was a jazz drum riff
Oh man.
that sounded like Elvin Jones.
Oh,
So
I'm
it's
there.
from the chirp of a cicada,
yeah,
you went down to something that was tang, 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 and it would repeat
yes,
exactly in every chirp of the cicada. In other words, that place, that vibrational set of rhythm was being created by a cicada, but it was so fast that to a human being, it sounds like a chirp, but that chirp holds an individual fingerprint
absolutely.
of
They have a
sound.
different
Yeah.
speed of consciousness. They're
Yeah.
working on a different speed of consciousness. I mean, look at us with our nanotechnology and our chips and stuff. Well, guess what? Nature's been doing that a little bit longer than we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, those cicadas and those critters, they work on a different speed. And so everything is, it's sort of like there was a Star Trek episode where they heard little pss, pss, and it was just people moving around real fast in a different dimension. But for them, they were working, it was normal. In that dimension, it was normal. So it's the same thing, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe their lifetime, maybe like a mayfly lives one day, 24 hours, but for that mayfly, that's a full life.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
This was demonstrated to me in something that I just happened to do myself, which was to first of all, take birds, a recording of birds, sing, and they're just singing, a whole bunch of birds, and I slowed it down dramatically in the same way that the cicada was slowed down. And the result was the sound of humpback whales singing. So
Yeah.
by slowing down birds in their living vibration, I was soon hearing something that corresponded to the living vibration of a sea mammal. My point
Octaves.
is, in music,
Yeah.
we were mentioning
Octave.
Miles Davis. He has a famous quote, which is, "There are no mistakes." And in that, we are in no small way, we are liberated and literally turned loose into an infinite realm of vibration that literally can draw us to certain places. And like G is green. You wanna walk in the Elysian fields. You're in an emerald green. Green is a symbolic color of this place that is verdant and beautiful and lush and alive.
Yes.
The pristine and pure quality of water in the color blue, and the significance of water to human beings and all of life. This idea that all vibration starts and ends with itself, and that you are continually, as a living thing, led to the part of the living vibration that is resonant throughout the living universe on this planet and every other.
And held together by this mysterious octave thing, which is 2-to-1 ratio. And I just find that so fascinating that we get to a note in the aura light color where it's the same note. Our mind goes, yeah, that's a D, that's a B flat, up to another B flat. Why? They're both B flats, but this one's higher, this one's lower. Now it's 2 octaves lower, it's still a B flat. That sameness yet differentness is one of the great mysteries.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and when I hear Dr. Ibrahim Kareem talk about it, and even John Worrell Keeley, they explain this journey of rhythm and motion, or journey of timing, from slow to where you don't witness it to it speeds up, right? And it's so funny because I play drums, right? But I just listening to them talk, I saw the difference between like a tone and a vibration. A vibration is like, like my chair vibrates.
Right.
But a tone starts to leave the motion vibration.
Yeah.
Experience. And so what happens is there's a long journey of the experience of frequency to, like they say, like he even talks about how in this certain range of motion we'll witness it with these senses. But
which
then
are
when
little drums, by the way, little drums in there.
Right. And then he said at the 21st or the 22nd octave, it will be perceived as visible light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's doing all this stuff in between. And then visible light will see it so long, and then it'll go on to that kind of light. It'll move, it keeps moving on. So what's interesting is it feels like, the best way is like to listen to the stories of the old ones, like the Aboriginals you talked about. And they talk about the song line, and they talk about traveling through the song line. They tell you part of it. Like, yeah, we're looking at our sites and we sing a song and we see where we are. But some of them talked about being able to go through the song line, and they're able to end up somewhere quicker than they're supposed to get there. And then the conversation goes quiet. You're not
That's like your grandma's flame also.
Right. Conversation just is, all your theories, Horatio, don't even touch where we're going here, right? But when we get back to rhythm, right, we're talking about the cicada, right, slowing it down, and it sounds like this, right? And now it's like, whoa, they go to sleep like for 17 years, and then they all of a sudden they just all show up. Yeah, they just all show up. Like, I think this year is a year that they're supposed to all wake up again.
It's supposed to be Brood X. They call it Brood X.
Yeah, they're coming out right now. I was born in the year of the cicada, so
oh wow,
68.
What is that rhythm? See what I'm saying?
That's a rhythm too.
That's a rhythm too. Yeah,
that's a rhythm too. And it's like why? And it's like why? You know what I mean? But
the rhythms are everywhere. Obviously you got the rotation of the earth and the revolution around the sun and the planets and the stars. All those rhythms, are everywhere. Of course, our heartbeats, we know, and down to the atomic level. So, the drum is definitely the start of all instruments in terms of that, getting right down to that sort of like slowing rhythm, slowing vibration down to a moment of like bam, bam, and then that's what I love about drums is they just slow everything down. Of course, they could speed it way up too, I know, but you know what I mean. It's just it brings what's going really fast on that violin. It comes down and it just turns into a bam on the drum, and that's why it's like the backbone of
Yeah. Yeah,
Can
and
I,
I gotta say one more thing as far as a backbone when we get from rhythm to tone. I find out that when you divide the frequency starting from 0 and just jump by nines, you just jump by 9,
Yeah.
18. Duh. You're gonna land to 216, 432. You know, boy, and you're gonna get to these special A432 tunings where the
Uh-huh.
mathematics start to show you the bigger
Oh,
picture.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, you know the
That
relationship.
makes a
You
lot
know,
of sense. That
yeah,
makes a lot of
and
sense.
like and like there's people who sort of design what our seconds are in order to
Yeah.
resonate with this larger picture. So if we
Yeah.
look at,
Wow.
like, I'm just gonna leave it with this one thought because I know we got to end. But like if you look at how many seconds there are in a day, you know, you break down the hour.
Yeah.
You know, every minute is 60 seconds,
Right.
and then there's so many minutes in an hour, so many hours. You know, the first half of the day there's 432,000 seconds. There's 432 again. You know, in the second part of the twilight, you know, has
Yeah.
432,000 seconds. So that we start to see, wow, there is this matrix that we're in, and people have designed certain things so that we might be able to resonate with it. The distance of a mile doesn't really make sense, but it makes sense when we start looking at these other relationships. Like
Yeah,
somebody set up
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. And by no mistake, well, or by coincidence perhaps, or whatever, 12 tones of music have sort of shaken out. Of course, there's other tunings, millions of tunings.
Yes,
I
but
don't,
this is a ladder. This is like a
that's
Jacob's
the
ladder.
ladder. And we know it's also imperfect because it's equal temperament and all that.
Right.
But it still came down to 12 magically. And
Yes.
those things that you're talking about, 60 and all those divisible by 12. And so we really do resonate with that world in a musical fashion.
Yeah. And last thing I want to say for people listening to this, there might be a little kid that hears something that sparks something. But when we're looking at rhythm, this gets all the way down to the medicines of the future won't be with scalpels and stuff. Like already there's a TED talk with resonant frequency, and they're shattering cancer. They're shattering
Yes.
all of these diseases just
Yes.
by aiming a frequency, and
Absolutely.
they define what the frequency is for these
Yes.
pathogens,
So
right?
like the bacteria, same with the bacteria, you can destroy a bacteria with the frequency. So you don't need antibiotics.
Yeah, and what was so deep about it, the rhythm, the pulse made it so it didn't burn the skin. Like if they tried to just laser it in, it'll burn the skin, but the rhythm allows it to go through the body and go right to that pathogen that relates to it. If it's not supposed to be there, you got to move on. You
That's
know,
it's
fascinating.
like noise canceling headphones for
it was
cancer.
something like that. But
Yeah.
did you see how we're back to art again? It's like
Sure.
Let
wow,
me,
and
let, let
it
me,
was a composer. He was moonlighting, doing this,
Yeah.
discovering this.
Yeah.
yeah.
It
That
says
makes
TED
sense.
TED Talk.
Yeah, I saw that. So
Shatter.
I wasn't trying to stop us. I mean, we've been going for a while, but we can go a little while longer. I wanted to, our friend Patty Rain is coming in. I think she's coming off screen, but
All
he's the
right.
Rupert
Sheldrake.
Sheldrake guy,
Ooh.
person. But
Oh
Peter,
yeah.
could you, as I let her in, Peter, could you, if somebody was just, walking in and wanted to know what is this theory of holistic tonality, could you just sort of summarize
Yeah. Let me
what that is?
summarize.
Walking in and wanted to know what is this theory of holistic tonality. Patty, go on mute.
Yeah. Let me
What that
summarize.
is. I'll mute her. Hold on. And wanted to know what is this. Go ahead.
There we go.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So in summary, it says that all what we call music is sound, and how and it goes into talk about, and the reason I concluded that was just by speeding up and slowing down, just like we have discussed here, various different musical aspects. And then I started to look at the microchemistry of music, that audio and how sounds are created. And also I was looking at the overtone series very early on. And so one of the things in music that we've always noticed is that the fifth and certain intervals play an important role in terms of our cadences and our turnarounds and all those things that we come to the 1 4 5, and we know all about that. But the fifth is always wants to lead back to the one and these things. But as I examine it, I try to come at from the inside out. And so I realized that the overtones of our own voices, of our own eardrums, of our bodies, the overtones of our instruments have a very strong fifth in them already. So it's whispering to us, there's a little bit of subconscious communication that's going in there. And so I started thinking, well, what if we played with that chemistry and put some new overtones in there that weren't fifths and things like that? Could we suggest some new places for music to go? And so it made me think basically that composers of the future would be able to compose music on an atomic level, so that music can come from a very small place, evolve into structure, play a riff, go back into a sound, have that sound morph. And so it's just a new, my real goal is to give musicians of the future some really interesting concepts to explore past my lifetime, and show that you can construct compositions on a timbral level. And that made me come back around and say, well, that's what we've been doing all along. We've really been making timbres. We just don't know it because we don't perceive it on that dimensional level, on that temporal level, but we really have been. So to find unification between the outer level of the music and the inner level of the music is a place where we can explore musically endlessly in the future. And that was really the goal of the theory.
Meditation almost, yeah, to see the micro and the macro of what you're dealing with. And that's inspiring for me, because I've always, like, for me, just bringing it back to art, I like to bring it to a story. And I'm always trying to look at music the same way when you do a movie like Avatar or something like that. They consulted with a linguist professor and they created a language, and they looked at language a whole new way. And I'm thinking of, when I'm doing music for movie storylines for the future, I'm doing that with music, where we're looking at music like what you're talking about. How is music going to impact the hero's journey to solve the problem when humans are not the top of the food line anymore, and AI is looking at you like an animal, and they're not wrong? You know what I mean? How are we going to look at that inanimate structure and know that it's not totally inanimate anyway, and deal with our music, right? So I love these concepts, because it allows to really look at music as this language that it is. And so you touched on like pi, looking at the intervals diatonically. And yeah, when you start singing those relationships as far as diatonically, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Every time you see three, that's just do, re, mi. You know what I mean? Do is 1. Do, that's 8, right? And so now we just listen to pi. The opening thing is 1, 4, 1, 5. 1 is do, 4, do, re, mi, fa, do, re, mi, fa, so. That's the opening theme of pi, is this wicked timpani lift. Boom, 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 boom. 9, 2, 6, 5, 3, 5, 8, 9, 7, 9, 3, 2. It's just so, you know what I mean? It's like it starts to sing to you. So I love these like you say, something that would happen after your lifetime, to look at it on these different levels, and what would that sound like for me in the music soundtrack? You know what I mean?
Well, and I want music. Your brother talked about this, and that how music is sick, and it is in a lot of this commercial aspects of it and things like that. And the monetary system is, that's a whole different discussion. You get into the monetary system that creates a lot of the sickness. The thing that I do believe in music is that it has a bright future, because the universe is musical, as we've been talking about. We can't escape it. You can't escape it. If the gods are talking, they're talking in music. And they will always be talking in music, and it will be, it could be light music, it could be music made out of light, you don't know. But if you can see music and feel music all around you and become part of the music, become part of that story, then you have a richer life. And that's what the real goal is, right? So we can all have the best life possible, and be part of the music and share it, and appreciate every overtone that we have out there. you know, as many as we can. And that's really kind of my personal goal and my mission.
Nice, nice. And just you're saying that reminded me of how, like, because I've gotten into microtones with Dr. Kirby, and I've gotten a chance to play with them and mess with them. Like in my software, I get a chance to hear the orchestras tuned to
Oh, wow.
A432, xylophones and everything, which would be hard to do now.
Yes.
But to hear everything, I have whole orchestral works. I'm hearing all the instruments tuned to A432,
Oh, wow.
right?
Wow.
And so when you talk about hearing these pitches, the way they rub off of each other is there's Shakespeare, there's the rub.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They rub off of each other. You can get these two tones to rub off each other, and then it creates a third tone. You know what I mean? And depending on where we are looking at the tone, starts to get into other, you know, other levels, you know, of relationship and vibing. Like if we look at the particle, you know what I mean? If we're not looking at the particle, it acts like a frequency. That's what it really is. But as soon as you look at it, it acts like what you're supposed to see.
Well, and that's why music, I'm not worried about the future of music. I mean, I suppose it could, you know, commercially die out or something. I don't know, but I believe that music is a force, you know, and it will find a way to express itself on another level. Okay, that didn't get your attention. Well, look at this. Listen to this. Watch this. You will feel the music. Believe me, because music does go right to your soul. You're gonna feel it.
Yes, yeah. It's so funny too, because the thought that I was thinking is like in the music of speech, it's where microtones live naturally.
Oh yeah.
So now musicians, when you're dealing with microtones, you feel like you're getting squeezed into a squeak jacket, and it's, wow, this is closer than the chromatic scale, it's closer to half tones.
Oh
And
yeah.
when we're talking, we live there.
Oh yeah.
When they're talking,
Oh, I love that piece that your brother did on one of his albums. I was just listening to this morning, and it was a child speaking, and then the bass would follow.
Right.
It was beautiful.
Right, yeah. And if you want to, like,
fantastic.
like Michael with no frets, you can go ahead and get way in between and get those in between relationships. But where those in between relationships, they live in speech. So a lot of times, even when I'm listening to hip hop, they're making up microtonal melodies.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Unconsciously.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just unconscious, but there is a microtonal sync.
Microtonal is where it's at, baby, as far as I'm concerned, because of that, because of speech.
Yeah.
And I think it's no mistake that so many Chinese people have perfect pitch because their language is very
tonal.
Yeah, ma. Those are totally different words.
Totally different. And so they have developed and evolved a more pitch-oriented brain or culture. I'd say maybe the culture.
Right. But you know, on this subject, if you listen, like I was saying, like the blues scale is a scale that you can hit these tones and get the feeling of the blues. But if I say now let's go microtonal. Listen to Maya Angelou talk. Listen to Dr. Martin Luther King's speech. That's a blues man right there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And we as people will get to the promised land. Now he's not singing the blues, but he's talking the blues.
No, you're so right.
Same thing with Maya Angelou. What we have here is
Boy, I
you
tell
know
you,
what I mean?
Indian people you speak with, there's such melodic speech.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and let me just ask a question, and Patty is here, and she may want to jump in too. But so, what morphogenesis and morphic resonance? What is the kind of the difference in that, and is it relevant to music? Is that even a question?
I think so.
Is that a question? I love that.
Yeah. Well, as we were talking about, morphogenesis is shape creation, and so that's to me that's what musicians are doing all day long. You know, is creating shapes. You know, in the air. They're hitting our ears and our brains. But the imaginary music is also fascinating because no one's hearing that except for you when you're imagining that for the most part, right? And so that's I don't know what's going on there.
Look.
Ooh, there she is, beautiful. Hey,
wow.
Yeah. Hey. And the morphic resonance of Sheldrake. Now that almost gets into more of like how, like when you're playing live and you're resonating with your audience, there's something it's not like listening to a recording, you know, there's a resonance there between living beings.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the morphic resonance.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go, Patricia.
Rupert Sheldrake's my bailiwick, man. I just went in his own words, morphic resonance.
Yes.
I propose that memory is inherent in nature. Most of the so-called laws of nature are more like habits. They're more like habits. And there's data, there's physical phenomena going on, but there's also a holographic map that's informing the physical phenomena over time. And these laws of nature, these so-called habits, evolve. And so he did multiple experiments on this. One of the famous ones, I think I mentioned in another one of our discussions, is the famous London Times crossword puzzle experiment, where there was a certain small number of people that always got the crossword puzzle. And it was like 20% every Sunday. So he decided to have people do the crossword puzzle on a Saturday night, 100 people. It's like the 100th monkey kind of. He had 100 people do this, and they all completed the thing. The next day, the percentage of people that got the crossword puzzle went up astronomically, something like 50, 60%.
Yeah.
That's morphic resonance.
Yes. Yes. And musicians
Yes,
live in that world.
Musicians live in that world. You're literally, you're listening. This is the muse. This is when the muse visits.
Yeah.
You're listening for the resonant bead. You're following a bead, and you're listening for the resonant structure that belongs to you.
Yeah.
It's your pattern.
You're in it. You're fully in it. Yes. And I love that other experiment of his that I read about, where he put a camera in his house to watch his dog.
Yes.
And he had his assistant randomly tell him it was time to go home over at the university.
Home. Right.
And he had a timestamp on his home video and a timestamp on this video over here. And he saw that as soon as his mind was directed itself to going home, that's when the dog came over and waited at the window. And he proved it.
I saw that. I didn't know that was him. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
he also did an experiment in New York in a walk-up apartment building with gray parrots. And this woman had a gray parrot, and the other person was down below, and they would show someone that they resonated to, like her mother or something was down on the first floor showing pictures. And the parrot would say, I see a person getting out of a car. The parrot would describe the picture that was being transmitted. It's on YouTube. You can see it.
Yeah, no, this is all like scientific. I mean, because he was a scientist and
he was a developmental biologist,
yeah,
like Bruce Lipton, and his conversations with Bruce Lipton are about this. But developmental biology, science, all of that stuff, music, arts, all of it is all of a piece. It's all of a piece.
absolutely.
We're all following. We're in compressed consciousness, but we're all following some sort of holographic map. What used to be called the Akashic record.
Yeah, the Akashic record, or the
Akashic record,
the Akashic museum, where you can go pick a riff off the shelf and say, "Oh man, check this out!" And here you go, Ornette Coleman jamming on something,
I'll go down the Akashic corridor and see what I find.
Yeah, all these ideas are just out there. I mean, if the universe is eternal, which it could be, we don't really know. We have the Big Bang and all that, but I kind of feel like it might be eternal in this weird way. And that eternity, think of what can evolve over eternity. Everything can evolve over eternity. Anything can evolve over eternity. So if this thing is eternal, then we are dealing with the final result of eternity right now, brothers and sisters. And that's
Well, you
pretty
mentioned,
cool.
I think you mentioned, Peter, about everybody is operating on fifths. They're operating in fives or fifths.
5 to 1.
I'm a synesthete, so I have done this for about 25, 30 years, done portraits of people. What I would see, and I related it to Plato's regular solids that he assigned elements to. And I went to Chinese 5 elements. And the 5th element is carbon, and that's a pentagon. That's a pentagon. That's 5. That's the fifth element is a pentagon.
I thought it was 6, but
No, I mean that's the fifth. I mean the 5th element in Chinese 5 elements.
Okay, I got you. Oh yeah,
is yeah.
Oh, it's carbon.
It's wood. Well, it's wood.
Wood, but charcoal. Charcoal. Yeah.
Relates to carbon.
Yeah.
But in Plato's parlance,
yeah,
the pentagon was ether.
Yeah.
And it's the 5th element.
Yeah.
That held it all together. And the 5, the pentagonal shape, is what holds it all together.
Filled with the golden ratio, getting back to Michael's original. Before you came on, Michael was talking about the.
I saw that.
Yeah. Oh, you did see that part. Okay. All right. Yeah. So the golden ratio and the 5th element. You know, it's wonderful.
That's all Fibonacci.
Yeah.
The whole human body is Fibonacci, and every artist worth their salt learns
the
Fibonacci scale of the body.
Yes.
And one of my favorite pastimes nowadays is I'm obsessed with it because I got all these programming chops over the years, and I love graphics almost as much as I love music. I love playing algorithmically, creating pentagons and stringing them along curves and changing their ratios in music. Oh my God, you guys you're gonna love what I've been doing lately, because I'm creating this animation software that's based on music. So it's on a musical structure. It's got a beats per minute. So everything that happens in the animation has to be happening either on some kind of a musical frame, because you got 24 frames per second. Well, I got to try to fit that into my musical pattern there. I want this to be 83 beats per minute. So that means that when this star comes up here, it's going to hit on a beat or an 8th note or 16th note, whatever. You know, you can play with that, of course. It's just like anything else. But anyway, the idea is the animation. And I want it to be real time, but my computer's not quite powerful enough to do all the fancy stuff. So I've been rendering it out to frames to create little studies. But anyway, but it ties all this stuff, the mathematics and the music and the graphics. It really ties it together, and it's just fun to work on.
Yeah, I love when we tying it all together. You mentioned the word eternal, and my brother Reggie always keeps talking about how the Bible and all these great myths are really like music books. They're written in verses. The universe is spelled like the singular verse. It's all kind of musical and tonal. He talked about the word eternal being atonal.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
That's funny.
Atonal, all the tones. You know,
your family is a trip, man. All I can say is your family is a trip.
Eternal means atonal. What? Okay.
So I have a question, and we have been going on for a while, so we may want to wrap up in a little bit. But so, you know, at the Planetary Gig Society, we do kind of have a mission of making connections through music with an intention of peace, and maybe in all this big discussion, peace is irrelevant or something. I don't even know. But Roy sent me a text not too long ago about Gary V, and I'll just read it, because he says, I was always envious of Walt Disney creating an alternative reality, and Vince McMahon, a professional wrestling drama. I always thought it would be cool to build a world. So, and this gets to Roy's point, how do we, musicians, artists, whoever we are, help create this world with this knowledge and these things that we're talking about? Is there a way to do that? Is that what we're doing? Or is it
yeah, to me, I would it's when you see like an artist or that creates a world in a movie. Star Wars is a universe.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's mythology. It's a world that you can clear. You grow up, you have your kids, and you bring them into that world and teach them about mythology. And you literally are just creating worlds. And James Cameron and all of these guys, directors for the Lord of the Rings, they learned from him creating that world, and they created their world, Lord of the Rings. Avatar, you literally creating the animals and the world, you know. And how do you do it? You look at nature, because nature's already done it. Everything we see in Avatar, he got it from the world, because
Right.
you can barely believe it when you see it in the world, you know.
Yeah.
So to me, that I think creating that world is what an artist can actually do. You can show the vision. How does this work in the world? Like, how does a protagonist like Patricia and all of these people who experience frequencies, they can see your colors. Like, I can't see that. You know what I mean? I met a guy. He came to me and he blew a flute. He went, and he told me all about what was going on in my body. I was like, dude, how did you do that? You know what I mean? And he says, yeah, it's just the way that the sound hit your sonic signature. And he could just see where there was stuff bouncing off the wrong way.
Well, and I think the role of artists also as healers, as creators of utopia or paradise, or
Yes.
as leaders towards that goal. I think, you know, society has to come around and value the arts and value music and value beauty. I mean, you look around neighborhoods. I'm here on this avenue in New Jersey, and there's a lot of ugly stuff out the window, you know, and there's a lot of wires blocking these beautiful trees, and it's kind of gross, you know. And we created a sort of an ugly world inside of a pristine, beautiful world.
Right.
And when we can get back to creating a beautiful world inside of a beautiful world, then children will grow up with that beauty, and we'll all be happier, you know. And so it's up to us artists to keep on pushing, you know?
Yeah, there's an aesthetic about it. And it's like I was saying, it's not enough to know string theory. You got to know how to tune the strings. Like if Michael plays that violin and the strings are out of tune, you can play the nicest song.
Yeah.
But if everything's out of tune, it's like, yo, dude.
You just got to stay on one string, dude. Stay on one string.
So I think, go ahead, Patrick.
What I'm talking about is the evolving morphic field. The evolving morphic field. And it's just like the cells of the body. The better your thoughts, the better, the more nourishing things you put into your body will remember and will create cells based on this new paradigm. So it's morphic. It's also relates to quantum tunneling, we talked about last time, which is the impossible can happen on the subatomic level that we can't do here.
Right.
I would urge everybody to talk about a world and creating worlds, to look at the movie Inception again. Inception. It goes down 3 levels.
Right.
3 levels of consciousness. And the 3rd level of consciousness is
I need to
5
rewatch
minutes,
that.
it's 10 years. You know, the timing is off. Everything is just, impossible things can happen. Whole cities can, fold on themselves.
And also, this is just reminding me of another great philosopher of our recent time is Terence McKenna.
Yes.
Right? Terence McKenna, who talked about this. He talked about this time of high novelty and novelty as a force. And so tying into what you're saying and what we've all been saying is that this morphic resonance is building in high novelty right now. We're seeing the world change fast. I mean, we're seeing it. It's going like this now. We're not here anymore. When we were kids, it was like here, and we're like here now, and we're headed for that. And that's hitting all of our psyches right now, and the children too. And there's a lot of suffering involved with it also, unfortunately, but it's rife with potential, potential, and for good.
Or
yeah,
right. Either or. It's like the white line in the road. If everybody knows the rules. I stay on my side, you stay on your side. But if we don't follow the rules,
oh my God,
there's gonna be some crashes. And I just have a feeling like the potential probably has done this a bunch of times if we look at the history of humanity. But when it gets here, what also happens is our potential to destroy the planet many times over is there. I heard
Yeah.
I heard Greg Braden talking about that. He used to work in the Navy, right? He's a spiritual dude now. I didn't know he worked in the Navy. But he said, yeah, man. He said, I'm using all these efforts and we're doing all these microwave towers. People don't know those are weapons, man. Those things can be weaponized.
Oh my
And he
God.
said, man, we could, the nuclear weapons are not even relevant anymore because we can destroy the atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
We can fry it 10 times over with all these towers.
Well,
But he says, am I going to devote my life to that? You know, you think it's just for your cell phone communications.
We're playing with fire. We're playing with fire.
You're playing with fire, my friend. Yes.
Playing with fire.
Right. So every time we get to here, it's just like that ski person coming on the Olympics with the agony of defeat. You can come off that ski thing and glide, or you could come off of that thing and crash and burn.
Yeah, you could be Icarus. You could be Icarus and just be melting your wings and just flopping down. You know?
And it
Right.
also,
Right.
I think it also terrifies people. I was watching a video with Rupert Sheldrake saying, "What is beauty?" And he said, "Beauty can just horrify and terrify people." And maybe the thought of coming into a spectacular world where we're all living on top of a mountain in Nepal, it's terrifying. Michael, do you have any words of?
Yes, this is such a fantastic discussion that names many different aspects of a vibrational way of seeing the universe. When we are mentioning some of these subjects, the word algorithm does come up, and the Akashic record is also something that reflects our experience, and it is not a theory. And an algorithm is a device that is it's like a virtual patterning of something
The
that
word
is
rhythm is
based
in
on
there.
a simple equation or a formula. And nature, there's this thing that Petr McClard knows about, and it's actually a branch of computer graphics, and it's called artificial life. And you take a simple equation, I mean, it's like x equals y plus n to the
you feed it back into
minus
itself.
1. And all of a sudden you have like a way that from that tiny little equation, you have the leaves and branches of a beautiful fern. In other words, all of the simple mathematics of the science of complexity, which is using these kinds of ideas, shows over and over again that the reason mathematics is able to show this is that it has the universal and cosmic nature and relation to all things, that nature doesn't need the equation. It just is out of this relation, which is so perfected that nothing can happen except eventually consciousness.
With a lot of iterations of a simplistic simplistic things which interact with each other, create this beautiful complexity we see.
And in today's world, we have this enormous difficulty with reductionism, which is counting all the A's in Shakespeare. You know, if algorithm is eventually perfected, human beings will finally have a little recipe for what to do and not do on the earth for us to live in harmony. And that algorithm is an empirical empirical cultural knowledge that has already been perfected with all indigenous peoples since the beginning of human beings. And human beings are really kind of like we're like 3.0. This has been going on where the first human beings that were not our species lived for 1 million years and did the same thing for 1 million years and survived. But then other things happened, and the earth holds all these other relations and vibration that are really kind of like the song of not just planetary evolution, but like the evolution of consciousness from energy and matter in their, rawest, most violent form in realms that human beings cannot go into. And somehow we get to this place where we are able to form these beautiful worlds in our mind. And
Yes.
that's with a nervous system that only operates at the speed of 30 feet per second. It's electrochemical. It's fuzzy. A human being is fuzzy, and machine language and machine intelligence are cold, hard facts and they're very, very much not going to ever come into the place that we as living creatures are. And if it's like shocking to find
That's
out.
a whole topic. That's a whole topic.
Yeah.
Consciousness.
Yeah.
An experiment that measured very, very subtle frequencies of radio, part of the radio spectrum, shows that DNA transmits, and that human beings and human nervous systems, while a musician is playing, that musician is transmitting literally a radio wave that is independent of time and distance.
Yes.
And that's just like, that's like the tip off right there, that we are touching
That's
etheric
morphic
kind of
resonance.
place.
That's the morphic resonance right there.
Yeah.
I was saying that too in our other panel. This is not a mechanical universe. We are not machines. We are organisms.
Yes.
There's
Organized.
there's no button to push. There's no lever to pull.
Yeah.
There are no gears to engage.
Yeah.
No
There's-
hammers and nails.
There's no really empirical algorithm. It's an evolving empiricism and a simulation of empiricism. So,
Yes.
I mean, we're sentient beings in a sentient universe.
Yes.
It's all about
I feel
feeling.
that. I feel like a person inside me. I feel very confident about my selfness and my awareness as being as being an entity that's perceiving the world. I mean, it's a beautiful feeling, right? It's beautiful to you're participating. And, I think it's the simplest magic that we all experience, but a lot of us are walking around not even realizing you're having that light is coming into you, and you should be feeling that, and there's a lot of people that it's sad. They're not really participating like they should be.
Yep. And at the same time, a lot of times that experience will visit you when you have a deja vu and you can't name it. Why is it that I know what's getting ready to happen? Like it'll visit you that, hey, this is not all that's going on. You know what I mean? And just tying together what you just said about algorithm. I love the word algorithm because the word rhythm is disguised. It's just used as an I instead of a Y.
Right.
And we're back to that timing again, the phenomenon of timing. And then I have in my Rhythm Hackers Facebook group, somewhere in there, someone posted, maybe I posted it, I can't remember, but there's an article about someone talking about when people take drugs and this kind of thing and get dissociation and their consciousness goes to different places, that they were able to recreate the effects of taking drugs by just playing a rhythm in the ears.
Yes.
They did it with mice and they did it with people.
Yes.
And they created like transcendent thing by just playing the rhythm.
Yes.
I was like, oh.
Heard that.
Yeah.
And like you can send one frequency here, another one here, just so tuned, and it will create.
And then it created kind of this enlightenment. You kind of went to enlightenment faster than you normally would with meditation. It's like, okay.
DMT or any of those sorts of things are basically, they're all playing with the same stuff, I mean, and it's about, reducing a filter on something that's already there.
Yeah.
Like we've often talked about that with hallucinogens and things like that. Well, you're maybe perceiving the world completely differently, but you're just changing the filters that it's already stuff that's out there already.
Right.
And it's just so funny. I'm just thinking like in the story of our improvement where we're just improving like this, right? And when it goes straight up, I think that's where all the crazy wars happen. You know what I mean? Like, okay, they fried the atmosphere again. Now we got to start all over. Got to reinvent the airplane again. We got to start.
We need sustainable.
Like what happens when we can keep doing that? You know, like what
But
happened?
that's not love. To me, that's not, you're not stopping to love
Yeah.
the earth. You know, like right now, it's a crime what people are doing to the earth, to me.
Yeah.
To each other too, a lot of, you know.
And you know, and it's worse than a crime. It's stupid because it's your own demise if you play with the earth that way, and you just think you can keep on doing it. You know, you got another thing coming, unfortunately, and that impacts my children and people I love, and animals too. You know, we always talking about, oh, poor people might not make it. Well, guess what? There's a lot of dolphins not making it right now, and other.
Yes.
So this is the time to really stop destroying the earth as a fundamental foundation for everything we're talking about. None of this will really matter if we ruin our biosphere or anything like that, you know.
Yeah, so there's a heart level empathy for what it is that we are and what it is that we're surrounded by and our relationship to things, you know, especially humanity. You know, I always feel like humanity, you know, we could do better. You know, when we think about the trees and the ocean, throwing all that plastic, and then the Navy does their sonar testing
my
in the
God.
ocean. The whales got a beach because they're like, they don't even have hands to put over their ear. They're just hearing all of that, and they just got
they're used to that. They're used to just like enjoying that peace and quiet.
And all of a sudden, you got neighbors sonar, and they're like, "Dude, get me out of this water! I got, you know."
I'm beaching it.
Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah. So I think all of this, you know, we're starting to shape our relationship with each other. And in politics, that's art again. We're making music, right? Because we have to know how to transpose for the different instruments. So this person speaks that language, this speaks that language. Boom, you know, music we're dealing with, like Reds talks about, atonal is eternal. The Ionian scale, the Aeolian, it's all ions and ions.
Yeah.
We're dealing with science. Ion is double ions, double helix. Ion, or Ionian scale. You know what I mean? Like, and in politics, that's how we're dealing with people, like the symphony. But if I don't know anything and I try to write for that violin that Michael's got, and then I try to write the same note for the French horn, and I don't know the rules of transposition to get that instrument to play the note that you're aiming for, you got chaos again. And I think in politics, there's an artistic level to this that we're trying to get to.
And they're out of tune right now. They're just way out.
The songs are out of tune. You write a law, but it's out of tune.
Out of tune.
It's out of tune with reality. You know, so it's like, there's an artistic level to this. And I think that once artists kind of can maybe show the vision of it.
That's right.
What is the vision of it? You know what I mean? Like, okay, you know, let's go to the moon, right? I just saw it today. There's water. NASA announced that there's water on the moon. It's like, okay, well, let's go and taste that water. You know what I mean? Like,
what does a billionaire run out and do with their money? They go out and buy art. They go out and buy beautiful, you know, places to live or whatever. But it's created by architects and artists, and they buy disgusting boats and things. But anyway, but still, the end game, even when you're extremely wealthy, is to have art. You know.
To me, you're talking about government, but to me, I was equating democracy with real egalitarian. Democracy is something that is in tune. Democracy for me is 432. What we have now is 440. We're not, it just doesn't match what the Schumann resonance, you know, it doesn't match the earth resonance, it doesn't match anything.
No, because we're not trying. They're not trying.
No, and democracy. That's why democracy is so messy. Seems to be so messy because.
But I tell you what, Patricia, artists have done a wonderful job over my lifetime of trying to bring that conversation higher and to bring the, you know, hey, you know, the words of King and Mayu and the beauty that's been put forth before us is leading us. It's leading us, and it's slowly leading. Where we just need to speed it up a little bit. That's all I'm saying. Is I really feel like it's time for artists to become more important and not less important.
Yeah, and again, like I say, you know, and a lot of times the artist is holding a more important voice. Like you look at Mozart and look at the King. Today we remember Mozart so many years later and don't even know who the King was. That's the relationship between the art and the politics. You know, we remember that significant thing. And then getting into
It's great.
yeah. I had one more point I was going to say about the art resonating down to the future. Uh, Go ahead. I'll come back. I have
Well,
one
I'll
more.
just, I mean, just, yes, one thing I would say, observe is today's poverty is often yesterday's wealth. You know, you look at what kings and queens had back. Well, I'm sorry, you didn't have one of these.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't have this phone here, and there's a quite, and you know, like the luxury, you know, the most beat up car right now might probably be, you know, a little more powerful than some of those buggies that you might have had or whatever. You know, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I'm just saying that what we value changes over time too.
Yeah.
And art should be a very highly valued.
Well, I think we can definitely agree on that. And we have gone on a little while. And I think maybe if we're looking at things in a temporal sense, we just figure that the conversation we've had in the last 2 hours has made a better world for these 2 hours.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hold
Go
on. I
ahead.
just
You got
remember
it?
what I was going to say for people who are out there listening to what Patricia just said about A432 and A440 to get a sense of it in terms of the story. There's an ancient Chinese myth that the kung was the tuning of where the instruments were supposed to be tuned to, and they called it the kung. And they said the king's ministers could go out into the village and just hear how in tune they were to the kung, to the tuning note. And he said, depending on how far off they were from the tuning note, they didn't even have to look at their civilization. They didn't have to read their books. They knew how far off that they were going to be, depending on how out of tune to the kung they were. So I'm relating that back to what Patricia said about A432 and A440. It's a few numbers, right?
Yeah.
But when we get into it, it's highly political.
Yeah.
It's very highly political why we decided
Right.
it's going to be
Yes,
440.
30s.
The Nazis were very interested in. I was like, why are they more interested in tuning than I am? You know what I mean? I go to music school. Nobody's that interested in
And
tuning.
the Greeks were interested in it big time too. You know,
Right.
the modes were part of the Republic, and you know, these modes made you effeminate, and these modes made you a warlike.
Exactly.
Yes, right. And so you'll see it in war and stuff. Music goes in front of it. They said Chinggis would come with 1,000 throat singers. And you think twice before going into battle.
Whoa, you do.
You know what I mean? So anyway, I just wanted to relate that to what Patricia said. On the mythological level, it's like, wow, the music proceeds. And like Red's talked about the Bible being a music book, the Ark of the Covenant, all of these powerful things. When you reduce them down, you'll see a musical theme.
A musical.
The Ark of the Covenant and the orchestra. The Ark, the middle of the orchestra is chest. The last part of the orchestra is Ra. You know what I mean? Ark, chest, and Ra sounds like the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes.
Set up in an ark. All of the musicians play. You know what I mean? You want to take down a wall, you put up the trumpets. You know what I mean? The military, when they march over a bridge, they have to march at a time. Because if they march in time, that resonance will take that bridge down. To this day, if you march over a bridge, you got to march at a time. So I'm just saying what Patricia said just kind of tied it back down, and there's a mythology there.
About 432, something like that. I'm really big on, in all my work, I'm really big on supplanting what is negatively impacting people, the earth, creatures.
Right.
I'm supplanting it in my small way, in my incremental way, in my quantum way.
Yes.
I hope to, you know, and the quantum, so-called quantum leap is supplanting this with things like 432, stay in resonance, stay attached to the Schumann resonance, stay attached to who you are, that you are not, dispel the image, dispel the image, dispel the superego, and get to the self. What is the face you were before you were born?
Yeah. All we need is 100 monkeys. Everybody get
it. That's morphic resonance, as Petr kept saying. Okay, I think we're going to probably just great conversation. We could keep going. I got that.
We got to stay in touch, Peter, because I want to talk to you about your program. We got to stay in touch.
I'll give the final word to Michael.
I would like to make the final word inevitable.
Inevitable. All right.
And the word is inevitable because although we would like it to be something that was designed by something, the universe and the cosmic vibration of the universe, the entire universe, is the design and leads to all things, that we finally recognize something that leads us back to this place where all things come from. Thank you, Jefferson.
Thank you, Jefferson.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Michael, Roy, Peter, Patricia,
Wow.
namaste.
Yes,
Namaste.
thank you. And
Thank
let's
you.
some kind of way